So yeah, how it started. I remember it very well, actually. It was in Zurich, in a very idyllic environment. So there was a workshop. So the whole thing started at some people making very bad decisions. So I was working in Bell Labs, and somebody decided to promote me. I became a manager, a department head in some math department in Bell Labs, and almost immediately, almost the same management started to say that math departments is absolutely useless. So why won't they earn their money somehow, not from us, somewhere else? So they send us down to DC to talk to DARPA folks, saying, okay, so find maybe some funding there. So a group of us went there, and so we talked to a program manager. And for some reason or other, this program manager just hated me. Just was like, and I asked them, what do you think? Obviously, we're talking about various projects, and asked them, what did you like? And he looked at me and said, no, you don't like anything. And you don't work with people like you. You work only with creme de la creme, with the best people, like Rob Greist. So okay. And I knew Rob by that time, so I gave Rob a call saying, Rob, I know you're very best, but would you have some room for somebody like me? And Rob, by his own confession, he tossed a coin. I was lucky. So yeah, so we started to collaborate, and I was invited to this workshop on topology and robotics, and Dan was there, and I just looked up the program of this workshop, and Dan and I were the only people whose title were TBA. I mean, to this day. So I guess that's why he started to talk to me. And I remember, in this little boat, it was on the lake. It was a day off, and we went somewhere, and then started to talk to me, and he started asking questions, and essentially the whole thing is continuing for this past 16 years. Then asking questions, and they sort of not making sense to me at all. I mean, not just oh, I don't understand, but no, why are you asking that? And I give a reflection to it, and the best analogy to that is, obviously asking questions is a long tradition here and there, Socratic method, whatnot, but the best tradition is the Zen tradition, where the koan is that the people who ask questions have as little idea of the answer or where it will lead them as the people they are asking them the question. So yeah, and then was asking a lot of questions. I've just touched on several topics which emerged. So one topic was quite influential to me. So one of the first questions he was asking about this navigation functions. So he had this work with Elon. And it's nice work because pictures, you like pictures, we're attracted to them. So you have this, so you have those clearly Morse functions, right? And you're saying, okay, you know what we're, we can look at, we can navigate there, right? So so you have this, So this is potential function. It will pushes you away from the obstacle, and all the way to your target, right? And Dan's question was rather mundane. How we compute it? What is how we can parameterize some expressions for those functions? I was who cares, because we know some function exists. And no, a robot should run it. And anyway, so. And so eventually, robots run, but it got me thinking, and probably that was Dan's implicit, subconscious, I guess, intention. So yeah, so So the robots run, like, yeah, there is a saddle, and there is this stable manifold for this saddle. All the points which lead to this manifold, and they're of course dangerous, because if you go to the saddle, you're stuck there, right? And but the people typically say to that, like, don't worry about it. The chances to land exactly on this saddle, stable manifold for the saddle, is 0, because it has positive codimension. But if yeah, so like landing exactly the saddle is probably not happening. But if you got close to the saddle and you do execute faithfully your gradient dynamics, then you spend a lot of time there, and that's not good, right? And I think this is like perplexity is what happens, because like our mental controllers, sometimes we have these saddles, and we stall there for a long time, and everybody who's having this, like you're walking to somebody and you don't know, like you want to go to the right or to the left of this person, and the person doesn't know exactly the same way. So this, uncertainty, this stalling, it does happen even in the simplest situation where both extremely sentient beings and we have this eye contact, and still we run into that. So imagine you have 15 autonomous vehicles trying to negotiate their resolution of their conflicts. So anyway, so I started to think about it, and you think about it like, whenever you have any vector field, so you have this any feedback control, whatever the mechanism is, if you want to get to some attractor, but the topology of the attractor, so here it's just a global minimum, some stable point, some equilibrium. You want to get to this equilibrium. So the topology of equilibrium is very simple. Or maybe you want to go to some gate, some periodic, template. Also very simple topology. But if the topology of the ambient space, of your phase space where you live, is complicated, like here, you have a lot of obstacles. Or if you have this, again, multi-agent system where with exclusion, right? So the guys are not allowed to run into each other. So topology of this space is also even more complicated. Right? So, so those dangerous places, the places you want to exclude, the places you want to do something else, again, like this stable trajectories are bad because you stall there. So to get away from this stalling, you should do something there. And to do something there, you have to first determine you are there. And to determine that there is decision problems. So if you look at the computer science and decision problems, topology of the set where you have to make this decision. So you want to determine, okay, so this guy and that guy will eventually collide, right? This is the bad set, and you do something about it. But this decision problem becomes difficult if the topology of the set is difficult. So what is the topology of this dangerous set? This again, like in this particular situation, this is just the stable trajectories of some saddles. You do some other feedback control, you can prove that no matter what, this dangerous set, let's call it cut, because you want to remove it, or maybe from cut locus, because cut locus is the archetypal example of this situation in standard Riemannian geometry. So if you take this cut, turns out the topology of this cut is, is bound, in some sense is bounded from below by the difference between the topology of the attractor where you want to land and topology of your ambient phase space. I call it topological perplexity because the term topological complexity was appropriated by some other people. Anyway, so yeah, so we have this topological perplexity, and and it was first of all, it was a fun story to discover what is behind this Buridan-S, Buridan-Donkey, like problems, but also because it, gives you tons of excuse, because, like you say, oh, I'm interested in this topology, but now I can with abandon compute this topology. So like after that, I had excuse to write like 5 papers about topologies of various exotic configuration spaces, because all of them are like important in robotics, like robots not running into each other, or maybe they're running into each other, but not more than 2 of them. Or maybe like 2 green robots can run into each other, but not 2 green and 1 red. So like you can see where it goes. So you can produce a lot of papers in that. Anyway, so this was a fun story, and But of course, as always, then you can, you will run also into racks. So we wrote a paper with my friend Boris Shapiro. We wrote a paper on racks because racks is an example of that, right? So you have this, excluded set, the set where you're not allowed all your limbs up, right? Dan told us it's bad for robots. And yeah, so we wrote a paper. Like we decided to just go like bananas and talk about how to run a centipede. So it's probably not architect, whatever. So yeah, turns out the problem fits into this topological perplexity paradigm, and you can describe what is the sort of the best way to what is the way to just to run it. So how to introduce those optimal cuts, optimal sets you have to remove with the minimal possible topology. Of course, they are again bounded from below by this by these mismatches between your gate you want to achieve and the ambient topology, and so you can think about it as some kind of topological sorting algorithm, because your gate is in some sense your limbs are moving in some cyclic order, and this algorithm which tells you, okay, so how you do it, what are the forbidden places to avoid, produces this cyclic sorting. And again, as theoretical computer science tells us, there's one of the most fundamental, one of the earliest examples of the lower bound using topological arguments is the the sorting requires at least whatever n log n steps, and you can prove it using again algebraic topology in some sense. So yeah, so in some let's return to those CS roots. Anyway, but and it was a lot of work, and a lot of fun work, which completely was driven by those conversations with Dan. But and it was just this one example. There were all other projects then. We had this Stomp project, and then there were Murray. So was always working with Dan, but never publishing any papers with him. It's amazing. I felt ashamed. So, but luckily it's about to change. So we have this nice story with Dan and with Bob Full's student Ben McEnroe, and so yeah, and it's about it is about templates and anchors and discovering them in the data, and it's a lot of interesting stories. But other again as I mentioned, we have always tons of interactions with Dan and the people around him, and over the past 2 or 3 years, I had absolute tons of fun interacting with Matt on various binding stories. So what happens if you have system stochastic system where you have consider the usual potential system to which you add a little bit of noise. And this is classical chemistry. It's Arrhenius law, which tells you, or Maxwell law, which tells you most of the time you're sitting close to to some local, to the bottom of local potential well, but once in a while you transition to another well, and the rate of those transitions depend on the height of the separating wall, potential wall between you, and how much time you spend in relative in each equilibrium, in each of this relative equilibria depends on this relative height. This well-established story in chemistry, and of course underlying a lot of this chemical dynamics and biological cycles, biology, a lot of equilibrium, chemistry, not biology. Chemistry, a lot of chemistry is driven by, essentially this, very simple set of ideas. But then imagine you have this, dynamics is not really potential. So imagine you add a little bit of tilt, right? Or you're steering your system in some particular direction, which it introduces these biological cycles, right? So, 5 minutes? Okay, I will need 2. So you have these biological cycles, and those biological cycles, like absolutely crucial for life. So again, people pay attention to them, but it turned out there was no good theory. There was sort of like one-dimensional theory which was going like well understood since the 80s, but in high dimensions, nobody really knew what was happening. There was not good math behind that, and so Dan sort of like pushed math, or maybe me pushed towards math. So like we started to work with math together, and and produced the paper, which when we started to write it, I absolutely was sure it will be like 15 pages paper. It grew to 75. So anyway, and there is another paper with math which like we're working on now. It's even like I like it even more in some sense. It's about stochastic isochrons, and I know isochrons. Like people understand isochrons very well. It's like phase theory, the whole underlying thing behind the gate, right? Have this in the deterministic dynamics, what happens. You have this like foliation which is carried into itself in dynamics if you have this stable, say, limiting cycle, stable attractor. What happens in a stochastic situation? Turns out that physicists have the like rough idea what happens in if you add a little bit of noise, but being physicists, they A, work in extremely limiting circumstances, and B, their definitions are all wrong if there are any. So anyway, so we'll just like help them. So so I began with how it started, and of course you have to say how it's going. So then like forces us all to rethink what we are doing. So I came to this collaboration, like to many collaborations with Dan again as mathematicians, but of course he like forced me, okay, so think about robots. And I designed a robot. It was implemented by the I'm trying to make so anyway, so this is this little critter. Like people were talking about like making simple, like complicated robots and simple robot. This is like origami robot, but made out of flat piece of paper. It's just with extremely few creases. If you can see, there's like 4 curvilinear creases, and just the energy is propagating from the center to all the limbs, and like you can coordinate it quite well. So this is the flat bot, as we call it. Probably will be, you can stack them 100 and then like spread them in some, like transport them wherever you want them to be, and then they can carry stuff, whatever. So anyway, all of that like stuff, like was occupying me like mentally. I was not bored for the past 16 years, like primarily big thanks to them. Thank you, Dan.